I would be thinking about you as I was recovering.
Yeah, that's what I, that's
Music on game controllers. Here, there's app library and widgets on your home screen.
One thing that popped out to me is that how many drugs in our society was considered good at one point, but once it got into the hands of like minorities, like black people or other minorities, all of a sudden there was like an evil narrative attached to it. Why do you think this is so?
I think that we have always judged, and this is not an idea unique to myself, we've always judged drugs based on the stereotypes we have about the people who use them. Whether it's during the gin craze of the middle of the 18th century, it was like urban, poor people in London. And this is a time when London's population was exploding. Poor people were moving into London from all over Britain. And people were very uneasy with the growth of London, how big it was. There's like 1 million people. They'd never had a city that big in Western Europe before. There's slums everywhere. There's poor people. People didn't know what to do, and they really were afraid of and looked down on and kind of hated these poor people. When I say people, I mean the wealthy people in charge, the elites. And now all of a sudden, there's gin out there that's really cheap, so that poor people, working class people, can get really drunk for not very much money. And this becomes a big part of the panic about gin. Oh my gosh, poor people are using it. And even at the time, people would say, some observers would say, the rich people are getting drunk also, but they're drinking rum punch and fancy wine inside. It's a hypocrisy for people to get worried about poor people doing the same thing with a different kind of alcohol out in the streets. They don't have a nice place to be inside and do it. So we've always had this tendency to look at the drug through the lens of who is using it or who we imagine is using it, right? So when cocaine comes about, the first time cocaine hits the United States, it comes in an injected form, mostly in the late 19th century. And one of the groups of people who were using it were black men in the U.S. South. And this is, of course, the time, the backlash against Reconstruction, we have the segregation is tightening up, and there's race riots against, prosperous black people. In the news recently has been the riots against the prosperous black people in Tulsa, in the 1920s. And this is part of this fear of black people, this hatred of black people by white people. And cocaine was seen to give black people, black men especially, like this superhuman strength, and make them oversexed and want to rape white women. And, you have to shoot them with more than just one bullet to take them down. And it's wrapped up. It's always been wrapped up. Who's using the drug or who people think. It wasn't just black men using the drug, cocaine, in the late 19th century. But this is what jumped out. It's one of the things about how we know about this stuff is what the media is reporting. And the media reports sensational things because they want to sell copies, right? And so newspapers throughout the South are reporting on black men using cocaine and becoming these monstrous animal-like people. And this becomes ingrained in the minds of the elite people who run society as to what's going on. And this is the way things have always been. The flip side of it is that once you get, for example, marijuana, we don't associate, if we associate marijuana in the 1990s and 2000s with sick people who need help, that takes away the stigma of marijuana as well and becomes more acceptable for everybody to use marijuana if it's seen as like, oh, this is something, cancer can hit anybody. We might all need this sometime. And look, it's fine. And these people are normal people. They're just sick. And so I guess marijuana is okay.